Good morning. It is 6:25 a.m. on Wednesday, July 24th, 2019. I'm Christiana Ellis, and I just got up. This is 5 more minutes. So, an excellent session of so many levels last night, where we played Dungeons and Dragons. It was a session that I'd really been looking forward to for a while, not least because we actually didn't have an episode last week. So originally the session we had last night would have been last week, but I'm glad we waited actually because we wouldn't have had everybody. And even as it is, we still were down one player, but I had a lot of big plans for this episode, and in particular, just the nature of what happens in it. And so I was a little worried, a little bit anxious about it, actually. And so just those of you who are not following the campaign, which is there's a, whatever. For those of you not following the campaign, the party has been trying to save the universe, as you do, by regrowing this big world tree that has been sealed away. But at present, it's being guarded by an angel who swore a sacred vow to keep it from regrowing on the basis of the belief at the time that sealing it away was good for the universe. And so they swore a sacred vow that they would never let it be regrown. But things have changed, or have they? And the party is convinced that they do need to have it regrown, but that places them in opposition to an angel who swore a sacred vow. Now, this angel is not a monster, and they don't want to just fight, especially because the angel looks pretty tough. But how do you persuade an angel to give up a sacred vow? And that was a challenge that I set for them. And now it always could have just become a big fight. But I knew that the party wouldn't necessarily want to fight, especially if I set up that the angel is not a bad guy. And so part of my interest in developing this part of the story was in wanting to see how does the party approach that when they have opposition that is not evil, but just someone who disagrees, someone who's on the other side of a confusing issue. And I was a little bit worried because I wanted this to be, this is a big sort of little mini arc concluding encounter. So it's kind of like, if you think of it in video game terms, it's like a boss fight. But if they're not just fighting, how do you make that work? And so I had all of these ambitious plans for how to make it work. And without getting into, over detailing exactly what happened in the session, it worked out great. It went as well as I possibly could have hoped, and I was very pleased with that. So, but just to talk a little bit about some of the elements that I decided to try to use in order to make this whole thing work. First, I decided that there had to be a couple of different possible end results, different ways that this could go, all of which allow the party to achieve a victory of one type or another, right? But you could say if the expected endpoint is that the party does ultimately get past this angel, but there are lots of different ways that could happen, right? So I thought about a couple of like the biggest categories of ways that could happen and how that would play out in each case. And then I had to say, okay, well, but how do we determine which one it goes into? And, you know, in Dungeons and Dragons, there's such a thing as a persuasion check, which is just like any attack roll. You are rolling a d20 in order to kind of determine how well it goes. And I think it needed to be more complicated than just, okay, we talk for a few minutes and now roll a die and that tells us the answer. So I needed to make it more complicated. And so part of the way I did that was the idea that the nature of the party being in opposition to this good creature is a reflection of this being actually complicated. And so the idea that this angel is potentially feeling conflicted about its position, I thought it would be important to bring that out. And so I introduced a character to sort of reflect and be able to voice some of the darker alternatives. And so the idea of, what if someone who says they're on your side, like they want to help you, you know, so basically introducing a character named Crux who told the party, yeah, I want to help you get past. And the way we do that is by convincing this angel that it made a stupid vow and that this was all terrible and it was a waste of time, and that, you know, and that it was a huge mistake, and that it should just give up on its vow, like it meant nothing. And so the party, I think, was rightly concerned that that character seems evil. And so, I don't know, it's like, even though they say they're trying to help you, do you want their help? Anyway, I'm starting to bump up against the idea of just doing a moment-by-moment recap, and I'm not going to do that. So I'm going to leave it there. But overall, this was a session that, because there were so many complex elements of it that were not just standard follow the rules combats or just set it and let the players do what they will role play, it required a lot of big role play moments and ideas from everybody involved, me and the players, and yet it all turned out great. I'm just very happy with it, and it's just some of the best stuff that D&D has to offer, in my opinion. So I'm very happy with that, but now I have to get ready for work, so I'm going to talk to you all tomorrow for 5 more minutes.